Hi people, it's me again, Marino Ravenberg, the one and only of course. This video is going to be a really quick powering through or a really quick session in relation to what happens to you after death. This is honestly within an occult context quite the mundane subject. So yeah, bottom line is what happens to you directly after you die. As far as I know, I haven't really done a video on that. So yeah, this video is also not going to be long because there's not a lot to say. There are several things that can happen to you when you die based on the situation. The first one is that when you die, okay, you move into the afterlife, so a higher plane of existence. But I'm not talking about that specifically because generally speaking, I'm assuming that knowledge is known amongst people or amidst people. What I am talking about and or referring to is immediately after you die. Let's just say you get admitted into a hospital, you die of old age, you name it. You die of old age at home, in your bed, in your sleep, you name it. Or you get admitted into a hospital because you were feeling unwell and you die. The first thing that can happen to you is, or the first thing before moving into the afterlife is, or moving on to the afterlife, is that you're going to wander around areas you've been to. So, first up, for example, the hospital. You're going to, generally speaking, see that you died, as in you're going to see your physical body. Some people simply overlook that. It rarely happens, but in general, you're simply going to see your own body, your own physical body, and come to the realization that you're dead. And after that, you're going to wander the vicinity, as in you're going to wander the direct environment in which you die, and then you're going to go home, the places that you considered home, all places that you frequented when you were alive. Let's just say roughly estimated for the first coming weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Or a month, depending on your situation and how slow or how fast you are in terms of picking up. Once you've come to the realization that you're dead and that you needed to say goodbye to everything and everyone that you had in that lifetime, then and in some cases in subsequent lifetimes, if you had multiple or if you had any, then you're simply going to move into the afterlife, higher plane of existence. And you'll primarily simply wait there until Judgment Day comes, and you'll simply go about your day in that plane of existence, within the context of that plane of existence. For example, the dead in general fall under Yesod as a whole, with Gabriel at the helm, of course. Gabriel rules the moon. Yesod is simply the Kabbalistic name for, the Hebrew Kabbalistic name for the moon, the celestial sphere of the moon. Other situation is that, and this is where hauntings come into play, is that when you die, generally speaking, it's due to either a traumatic event, multiple traumatic events that led to your death, or overall a life that was unpleasant to say the least, and let's just say you come from a broken home, or you have suffered tremendously, life has been a burden, and you have really had to deal with a good deal of negativity, and you die under those circumstances without peace of mind. Generally speaking, what's going to, either that, or for example, you die during a horrible car crash where your body explodes, something like that, just as an example. What's going to happen is that you're not going to be able to find peace. For several reasons. You won't be able to cope with the fact that you die. You're simply going to be partially bitter or simply discontent from a neutral perspective over the life that you've led or the life that fate has handed to you. And you're simply going to, let's just say, refuse moving into the afterlife or moving on to the afterlife, to that higher plane of existence I was referring to earlier. And your negative emotions primarily will hold you back. Anger, resentment, hate, bitterness, disappointment over one's life, you name it. Stuff like that. We're not talking about superficial things, as I wasn't really satisfied with the way things went in my life. No. We're talking about deep-seated, heavy emotions that are so heavy that that you simply can't think straight. In that same context, after you die or directly after you die, you're going to start haunting a location, or you're going to start drifting aimlessly across the world, and you're simply going to turn into one of those drifter spirits. And more often than not, depending on how strong the feelings within you are that are negative, you're going to try to react off on others. A simple example that I can give is, for example, someone that was admitted into a mental hospital, and the person spent 10 years there under the most excruciating of circumstances. We're talking about abuse by hospital staff, getting into altercations with other patients. You name it. It quite literally had the adverse effect on you, to the point where you're even more broken than when you were admitted. Instead of being healed or being cured, you've completely gone off the deep end mentally, and your mind has fractured, and you're just a stereotypical mental patient. You're just gone mentally, at least partially. It's an example. Imagine dying under those circumstances. And that's why. And that, generally speaking, you're obviously not going to be content with the way you died. For example, if an inmate killed you, not an inmate, sorry, I mean another mental patient killed you, or you simply couldn't take it anymore, so to speak, and you killed yourself. Generally speaking, that it goes without saying, almost based on what I've said up to this point, that you're not going to be able to come to terms with the fact that you died under those circumstances. That is neutral. Generally speaking, people, with the exception of people that are ridiculously afraid to die, which makes no sense, by the way, obviously, because that is normal. You were born once, so you have to die once. That is common. It's literally as common as having a physical body, you name it. You were born, so yeah, your life began, so it needs to end physically, your material life, or your life in a material plane. So yeah, for the people that are afraid of that, makes no sense. In any case, not to drift off topic, generally speaking, people don't really have an issue with that. It's the circumstances under which they died, all the way up to the last moment that they were alive. Those circumstances cause the hatred and the resentment. You can imagine that someone that dies under those circumstances, even if it were you, dying under those circumstances, imagine being a mental patient, everything I described, you being raped by multiple thingies, including hospital staff, by multiple of other patients, including hospital staff. It's just nothing but misery and anger and hate, and you're to the point where you can barely think straight. So imagine dying under those circumstances. If you die under those circumstances, generally speaking, you will not be able to find peace, or not immediately, by the way. Okay, it all depends on your level of spiritual evolution. How long will it take before you're capable of letting go of that anger? And until that time, then yeah, your negative mental state prevents you from moving into the afterlife, the higher plane of existence. So you're going to wander in limbo, in the lowest of astral planes, where the majority of negative spirits, low-level spirits like astral parasites reside. The astral plane that is the closest to the material world. And as a result, you're going to start haunting the place the direct vicinity in which you died, or you're going to drift aimlessly, you name it. But generally speaking, now you're going to stay within that vicinity, because your anger also prevents you from going to other locations within a material context, the way that material people that have material bodies do, as in the real world, so to speak. And yeah, that's how you have haunted locations in general. That's why locations that are, generally speaking, the most haunted or the most prone to being haunted are locations where people died, and not only died, but died under unpleasant circumstances. Contrary to mundane belief, make no mistake about it, graveyards are, generally speaking, not haunted. It depends on the graveyard, it depends on what transpired at that graveyard, etc. But in general, no, not really. Okay? If you go to a graveyard or a cemetery, the chances of you coming across a dead person or any spirit is low in general, let alone a violent one, or one that's aggressive or wants to hurt you. No, The places in general where you can expect a lot of discontent, that people, which in their turn also attract negative spirits to them, are places, for example, like hospitals, mental institutions, places where a lot of people died, and they died under uncomfortable or unpleasant circumstances. Battlefields where wars were fought, just goes on. These places are common. These places are commonplace for hauntings, or the most prone to becoming haunted, and that's why. So yeah, up to this point we've covered the first thing, where you simply move on into the afterlife peacefully. The second thing is that you might that you haunt the place, etc. And in relation to the first way I mentioned, you're going to visit your direct vicinity in general, the places that you went to when you were still alive. For example, the house that you lived in, you enjoyed going to the park, that specific park. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And as for actually being able to influence the material plane, that happens with practice. It all depends on the individual, the traits that he or she possesses. Since traits are spiritual in nature, they're astral in nature, they're not material. So you, generally speaking, take those traits with you. So if you're good at bookkeeping in your lifetime, then you're going to be good at bookkeeping even when you die or after you die. But in order to actually influence, for example, someone's finances, it requires practice. The same way that with people that are alive, so with us who are alive at this moment or at this juncture, practice makes perfect, because it has nothing to do with the physical. It has to do with the astral, okay, with the mental. The mind learns through repetition, or better said, the astral body learns through repetition. That's why when you do something multiple times, you get used to doing it and you gain experience. That's the definition, occult definition of experience. Because your astral body automatically absorbs the knowledge and it remembers what to do on impulse or by impulse. So yeah, those are, generally speaking, the things that can happen to you. The things that happen to you when you die, directly after die. So the second that you start flatlining. Those are things that can happen to you. Nothing else comes to mind, really. Like I said, I've covered 2 points, and the first point is a decent one. The second one, not so decent, obviously, because no one wants to become a haunted spirit. But yeah, that will happen. With some people, like I said, it depends on their level of evolution. Some people, after a while, they can let go of their anger, and that's why, they simply, even if they haunt the location, they may be haunted for 5 years and then they're done. Because by that time they've grown to the point where they can let go of all the negativity that held them back. With others, their hatred and negativity is so great that it really lasts a while, and as a result, you'll end up having a place that is haunted for half a century, you name it. It just goes on. It can last centuries even. And last but not least, before I'm gonna go, but before I do, because there's nothing else. I'm trying to think if I missed something. No, there's nothing else that comes to mind in terms of what can happen to you. Please leave a comment in the comment section if you are of the opinion maybe that I forgot something, or if you want to pitch an idea. Yeah, last but not least, what was I gonna say again? Oh yeah, the thing is too that when people usually see an apparition, okay, for example, a dead person, it doesn't literally have to be a dead person. I think maybe I mentioned it in a past video, but I can't remember. If so, a live stream. Point is, I'm still going to mention it, that there's also such a thing as left behind residual energy. For example, that will play in a loop-like fashion. For example, you'll see someone jumping out of a window. That doesn't mean that it's a haunting, or that it's specific. Well, that doesn't literally mean that it's a dead person. It's simply residual energy left behind of a traumatic incident, and the level of negative energy, the trauma was so great that it left behind residual energy. The same way that if someone sprays perfume, it lingers in the room for a while, and after that it dissipates. So yeah, like I said, it all depends on the intensity of the event that took place, the duration of the residual energy specifically. So if you go to a place that where, for example, you hear that someone killed themselves by jumping through a window, you'll know why you saw what you saw. But that doesn't mean that it's the actual dead person. It's simply a playback. Okay, it's the event that the residual energy of the event that took place, the residual astral energy, being so strong that you can still see it. It simply plays in a loop. You'll see that person jumping out of the window, you name it, at intermittent and random times, or adversely at a specific coordinated time, okay, on a frequent basis or in a frequent like fashion. And yeah, it'll simply disappear with time. You'll for example never see it again, maybe after a year or less even, you name it. Like I said, it all depends on how strong the energy level was present during the traumatic incident or event. So yeah, that's all. See you guys later. Bye bye.